Alright, example 4 is where we're starting. It's essentially the same thing as what we did yesterday. The difference is that A is not a 1 anymore.
It wasn't on the assignment yesterday.
It was every time that you couldn't factor it.
What's up, Olivia?
Yeah, there was one, number 9, that was not a 1, but you could factor it. So you didn't need to do it this way.
You know what's really nice to see on your Chromebook? The little overdue thing has a 0 by it.
I would imagine.
Never seen that before.
Okay, so yesterday, when we were solving these, our A was a 1. Okay?
What?
Today, our A is not a 1. That does not make this problem very much harder. Okay? All you have to do is divide everything by A. So in this case, I need to divide by 2. X squared minus 10x plus 30 equals 0. Because 0 divided by 2 is still just 0, right?
I have a question.
Wait, that's not even that.
Yes.
You have to divide by A, like you can't divide A by something, you know what I'm saying?
You can divide A by itself.
Never mind.
You can divide A by A if you want to.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. You have to.
If it's a fraction.
If what's a fraction?
A.
If A is a fraction, you divide by the fraction.
This doesn't look that
And that
hard
means you
yet.
multiply.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Multiply by the reciprocal.
Yep.
Okay.
So it's just
Okay. So now,
Just you. Whose phone?
alright, so like I said, there is a possibility that you end up with a fraction here, right?
Yes.
Right? Like if I divided by 3, I'd have 20 over 3 here.
Mhm.
Okay? That's okay. You're just going to have to deal with the fractions. Okay? You have to be able to do them. Okay? Now, check and see if it's factorable. It probably won't be because that's what we're working with right now. Okay? Anything that multiplies to 30 adds to negative 10. No. So we get rid of that negative 30. Or excuse me, we get rid of that 30. Now it's a negative 30, but on the other side. Now we just complete our square. Okay? What did I use to complete my square?
B over 2 squared.
B over 2 squared. So B is,
Negative 10.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But if I do it to one side, I gotta do it to the other. Okay? Now, some of you are gonna get to the point where you skip this step and change this negative 10 over 2 just to negative 5. That's fine if you can handle that. Okay? So, this left side factors to
X minus 5 squared.
x minus 5 squared, and we went through the whole reason as to why it does that yesterday, but we can just take that shortcut now that we understand why that works. Okay? And then this negative 10 over 2 is squared is 25. So negative 30 plus 25 is negative 5. Okay. Now we can just finish solving this out by algebraically. So just like Damien said, square root both sides. So I have x minus 5 equals plus or minus the square root of negative 5. Yes.
Does the plus or minus always go in front of the square root then?
Yep.
Cool.
It'd be imaginary.
Hey, it's going to be imaginary because I have square root of a negative, but I can't do anything with the 5, right? So when I move this 5 back over, I'm going to have x equals positive 5 plus or minus I square roots of 5.
Hold on a quick sec.
Wait, why can't you just leave it as square root of negative 5? It's simply not.
Because it's not in simplified form.
So if I is the square root of negative 1, why don't you take the square root away? Why wouldn't it just be 5i?
Because the square root of negative 5 is the square root of 5 times the square root of negative 1. So there's still a square root with 5.
Okay.
This just changes to I.
Alright.
No, because the I does not go with this 5. The I goes over here with this. You can't just take the I and put it wherever you want because it's being multiplied times this. Okay. So, that's no different than what we did yesterday, other than the fact you need to divide by something first, correct? Okay. Now this next stuff you're going to have to pay close attention to because these are the things that people struggle with the most out of this lesson, is the next two examples. Okay, so pay attention closely to this. Okay, what we're doing is we are changing from standard to vertex form. Now we have done a little bit of this, because if I have something in standard form, I can use negative b over 2a and I can end up finding the vertex, right? And my a is not going to change. Okay, so there are ways to do this other than what I'm going to show you, but to be able to do some of these other problems like example 6, you have to do it this way. Okay, so when I take, where's my equation now that I'm looking for? This equation, y equals x squared minus 22x plus 16. And they want us to write this in vertex form. Okay. Notice, if I were to backtrack here, looking here, if I added that 5 back over here with me, so then I have plus 5 equals 0. Isn't this vertex form?
Oh, sure.
X minus h squared plus k. Right? My a is 1. Right? This is vertex form. Okay? I just happen to plug in 0 for y right now. Okay? So completing the square can get us into vertex form, and that's how we're going to do this. So I'm looking for an equation that's in the form y equals a x minus h squared plus k. Alright, so I have to take this problem and do what with it? I got to complete the square. Okay, the first step in completing the square, if your a was something else, we did that. But the next thing we did is we took this 30 and moved it to the other side, right? Okay, we need to do that first. So let's take our 16 and move it to the other side. So now I have y minus 16. And I'm going to leave a space here just knowing that I'm going to have to add something else in here. And then I have x squared minus 22x. Okay, now that I've done that, now I have to find that new c value. Okay, how did I find that c value? b over 2 squared. b is currently negative 22. So negative 22 divided by 2 is negative 11 squared. Okay, just so I have record of that's what we did. But if I did it to one side, I need to do it to the other side. Okay. On the right side, what should this factor to then?
X minus 11 squared.
It should factor to x minus 11 squared. On the left side, I still have y, but I have negative 11 squared is?
121.
So what is negative 16 plus 121? Positive 105. Okay. Now what do you suppose I need to do to get it all the way in vertex form?
Put it on
Get y by itself. So y equals x minus 11 squared minus 105. Same process, that looks a little bit different though because I'm going to have that y value in there that whole time. Okay, but you're still doing the exact same thing. Like I said, you just happen to have a y minus this instead of just being one number over here. Okay. We okay with that one? Okay. Now the next problem we do, you really, really want to pay close attention to, because I took your quiz during third period, and I promise you, you will have a problem almost identical to the one we're about to do. Okay? So I'm telling you what one of these problems is going to be. Okay? Make sure you understand. If you have questions, let me know. This one's going to be a little bit longer. Okay, we're looking at example 6. It says the height in feet of a baseball t seconds after it is hit can be modeled by the following function. And then they give us y equals negative 16t squared plus 96t plus 3. Okay, so there's our function. They want us to find the maximum height and then figure out how long does it take the ball to hit the ground. Okay? Well, we know the maximum height of a parabola is going to be found where? At the vertex. Okay? What value of the vertex, x or y, is going to be your maximum height? Y. Okay? So if I can turn this into vertex form, then I can easily see the vertex in my equation, right? Or I can see my height in my equation. Okay? Last class, this is when they brought up, well, can't I just use negative b over 2a and find the vertex? Sure, you'll get the same answer. Okay? You won't be wrong. But when you go to the second part of the question, and it says how long does the ball take to hit the ground? Okay, well, if we're doing that part, that means y has to be 0, correct? If I were to plug 0 in right now, this is not factorable. Okay, so you're either going to have to graph it or complete the square to solve it anyways, right? So if you just complete the square in the beginning, you don't ever have to use negative b over 2a. And you're going to have to end up going back and using and completing the square anyways later. You get what I'm saying? So either way, you're completing the square. So it really doesn't matter. So we're just going to complete the square right away, so we only have to do half the work. Okay, what did we do to complete the square first on the last problem? We subtracted our c. I want you to do that first also on this problem. Some people would divide by negative 16 first. You should get the same answer, but if you do the c first, your number is going to be way easier to work with, I promise. Okay, so let's subtract our 3. So I have y minus 3 equals negative 16t squared plus 96t. Okay. Everybody with me on that? Okay. Now our next rule with completing the square is that a must equal 1. So I need to divide everything by negative 16. Now obviously on this left side, I can't really do that, right? Unless I want some goofy fractions. That's okay. Leave it just like that. Y minus 3 over negative 16. If you leave it like that, your numbers are not going to get too crazy, and you should be able to get everything back to where you need it. Now on the right side, I'm going to leave some space here because I'm going to complete the square here in a second. I'm going to leave some space to fill in b over 2 squared. On the right side, negative 16 over negative 16 is just t squared. And 96 divided by negative 16 is negative 6t. Okay, they're going to give you problems that most likely come out nice like that. They're not gonna try to give you anything too crazy where you end up with like 132 over 5. Okay. Now I'm at a point where I can complete the square on this side. So I need to add what? B over 2 squared. B is?
6. Negative 6.
Negative 6. So negative 6 over 2, which is negative 3 squared, correct?
Wait.
Yep.
Why aren't we doing 96 over 2?
Because I divided by negative 16, so this is my new B.
Okay.
When you divide by negative 16, you gotta divide everything by negative 16. You're good there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so we're just using what our actual B is now. Okay? I added that to the right side, so I need to add it to the left side. We okay so far? Okay. There's a lot going on this problem, I get that, so make sure you let me know if you're stuck. So I have y minus 3 over negative 16 plus, what's this end up as? 9 equals, and the right side factors to
T minus 3 squared.
t minus 3 squared. Okay, so we're getting close because I got t minus h squared, but I still have this mess over here. What should I do first to start getting all this stuff back away from y? Subtract 9. So I have y minus 3 over negative 16 equals t minus 3 squared minus 9. Multiplied by negative 16. Now you do have to be careful here. When you multiply by negative 16, you need to do it here and here. You with me? So I have y minus 3 equals negative 16 t minus 3 squared. What's negative 9 times negative 16? 144? Okay. And then my last step, add 3. Y equals negative 16 t minus 3 squared plus 147.
Oh.
Peyton, did you have a question?
Not anymore.
Alright, now, they didn't care about the equation. That wasn't the point of doing all that. The point of doing all that was I can now look at that. It's in vertex form. What is the maximum height of my baseball?
147.
147. Okay, so my max height, I can easily see here, is 147 feet. Okay. The next part of the question says, how long does it take before the ball hits the ground? Okay. So if it's talking how long does it take, obviously that's time, right? Okay, so we know we're solving for t. When the ball hits the ground, what's my y going to equal? 0, because it's on the ground, right? So you need to take this equation, plug in 0 for y, and solve for t. Try it. I'll give you about 5 minutes. Work with your neighbor if you need to.
Ooh.
It's still behind the plus or
Okay, let's run through this real quick and then you can work on your assignment. So, first step should have been move the 147 over, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have negative 147 equals negative 16 t minus 3 squared. Next step, divide by negative 16. Okay, negative over negative, that just goes positive, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So I have 147 over 16 equals t minus 3 squared. Okay, all we're doing is we're solving this algebraically, right?
Yep.
Okay. Square root, because those cancel. Square root. So I have the square root of 147 over 16. Now, when I did this problem, I left it just like that. I didn't even square root 16 because I knew that the directions, and I didn't tell you guys till later, but I knew the directions said round to the nearest whole number. So I didn't bother simplifying it any if I could just type it in the calculator. Okay? So that was just my choice. It doesn't really matter. This is plus or minus. So when I move my 3 over, I end up with 3 plus or minus the square root of 147 over 16, correct? Okay. Here's something that I didn't see it. I saw a couple people do it, but last class really wanted to just take this and be like, oh, I plugged that in my calculator. That's 3.
Wait.
Okay, but it's not, right? It was like 3.03.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't want you to do that because it doesn't affect this problem, but if you get in the habit of rounding that early, and maybe late in some problem later you have to multiply by your rounded number, the more things you do to that rounded number, the more off you're going to become. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So like, for example, let's say I had to multiply a bunch of stuff, you rounded it, the correct answer is 6.3. If you rounded too early and did all this multiplication, you might have got 6.7 because you rounded up too early. Get what I'm saying? So avoid rounding until the very end. So what I did when I did this problem, and I will write on the board exactly how I typed it in my calculator, I just took this right here and typed that right in. So I took 3 plus square root, and it put a parenthesis for me, right? 147 divided by 16, I close the parenthesis, that equals like 6.03. It says round to the nearest second, 6 seconds.
Wait,
Okay.
would it be 6 and 0 since it's plus or minus?
Well, yeah, technically, when you solve it, t equals 6 and 0, right? Okay, but
You can't have
the
0.
ball hasn't went anywhere at 0 seconds.
Yeah.
So they're asking, after I hit it, how long does it take before the ball hits the ground? 6 seconds. Okay, you guys understand what I'm saying with the rounding? It doesn't affect this problem at all. Okay, but on future problems, and as we go on and get a little bit more difficult, it will change your answer and it will skew the results and count your answer incorrect. Okay. All right. That's the end of 3.3. You should be able to finish that lesson, and we have a quiz
Is that quiz
tomorrow.
going in chat?